Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Abby Liang. I am the president of the UCL Debating Society, and I'm here on behalf to welcome you all to our public debate on Love Me More. So as you all know, or as you probably have realized from being thrown in your face, all of the Valentine's Day merchandising that is happening in supermarkets and shops on the high streets, that it is Valentine's Day next week. So we thought it would be a good idea to bring to you a public debate on the pros and cons of love and how we are weaned on this concept of love and the commercial aspects of how we are brought up on this concept of idealizing romance in our lives. So today we have 6 speakers from UCL Debating Society. On my left is Christian, Connor, and Phoebe, and on my right is Lisa, Mansa, and Umar. Together, we're going to bring to you a discussion on love and romance in our lives, and I hope that you will have a wonderful time here, and at the end of the entire discussion, you will also have an opportunity to bring responses to our debaters and bring your own thoughts as well. And with that, we welcome Christian De Silva to open our debate. Here.
I suppose I should start my portion of the speech with a small confession, and that is the fact that I'm 19 years old and I have never had a great love. So I think it's important for me to keep that in mind as I begin my speech, which is to say that despite that fact, I feel as if I have had many loves. I have had the loves of Romeo and Juliet. I have had the loves of Orpheus and Eurydice, and I have had the loves of every rom-com made since 1990 with National Treasure Hugh Grant. Why is this? This is because in our society today, love is in the air and on the screen. Love is in our media, both traditional and social, with Hollywood directors and social media stars feeling the need to saturate every and all of their content with love. Now, why is this? It's because I will be the first to admit love is captivating. Love is a meaningful story. Love is something that touches all of us, even if we haven't had that great romantic love. So if I can admit this, then what's the problem with it, right? Sure, there's a lot of love. There maybe is so much love, but is that too much? Well, I would posit that yes, it is. For as people, we're not made in one go. We're not a singular object, but rather we are formed bit by bit with every interaction, every piece of media we consume, and every way that we see the world is shaped in multitudes. And these multitudes are easily impacted by the media that we see in movies and in TV and on our phones and in our lives, and as our chair mentioned, on Valentine's Day. And what is the cumulative effect of this? There's twofold, really. First, it's that we don't know what real love is. We want every and all of our loves to be all-encompassing, all-meaning, and all-powerful, and we see it as the only true form of human experience. But beyond that, too much love can be the marginalization of other stories, too. Emily Dickinson said that to write is to tell the truth, but tell it slant. Well, when we write so much about love in our media and in our social media, there is too much of it because it marginalizes our other stories. And when you do that, you lose the meaning of love and you lose the meaning of other stories. Because to have no context without an anchor, without context, you are literally adrift in a Red Sea, washing away with the warm tides of romance. Now, if we finish out with the original, some of our favorite writers from olden times, the Greeks, we can see that they understood this. They knew that to love, Plato said, our truest purpose as humans is to find our other half, that love is about finding the other part of yourself. He knew that love on its own means nothing. I can love as much as I want, but that doesn't matter without context, without an anchor, without something to sound it off. So if I can leave you with any thought from my speech, it's to know that there is too much love, even if it's great, even if it's beautiful, because it means nothing in the end. And it's so much sweeter when we have something to compare it to. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian, for those fine remarks. We now welcome our second speaker, Lisa. Here.
Dear members of the audience, I would like to ask you to imagine yourselves in the place of Sisyphus, pushing a giant boulder up the hill, again and again. It seems that the action is meaningless, and Camus argued that the point of Sisyphus' life is struggle, that it is enough to feel a man's heart. But I believe that love is the ultimate answer. Love is the meaning of our lives, though it might be irrational. Love is a great source of inspiration and support. It makes us present ourselves in the best version possible because we want to provide the best care for the person whom we love. And this is really important because this person also is ready to provide the same level of care for us. They are always there to support us. Either if it is a success or a time of failure, they will be there for you. They will be a shoulder upon which you can cry on. And this is something that is really giving you stability in life. I think the stability is crucial, specifically right now when people are occupied with so many things. In the age of workism, they consider that their career is the most important thing. But they can only succeed in their career as long as they have a significant other who is there to support them, who is there to give them a helping hand. But moreover, love is a source of inspiration even if it doesn't provide all the best feelings possible. We know that love is like a soft diamond. It is full of contradictions. It can bring you pleasure, but it can also bring you pain, and that is all right because all those painful feelings shouldn't be devalued. They are also allowing people to learn more about themselves, to explore different aspects of their personality. This is crucial and that shouldn't be discarded as something that brings pain. Because know that the most important artworks were created because of the fact that artists were suffering, because they were longing for their significant other, or they were in the stage of despair. But they produced something that humanity believes is the most valuable part of our culture. And I think that love is ultimately not a good force. It is not black and white. We definitely need more nuance in this question. And the nuance is provided because love gives you inspiration. Love gives you support. Love is something that is always there for you even in times of great struggle. And I would like to conclude my speech with saying that, well, Camus told us that we might imagine Sisyphus happy. I think we might imagine ourselves happy as long as we have someone who inspires us and who supports us. And this is a person we love. So we should not be afraid of that. And loving people more is something that will actually be a source of great happiness for people in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, speaker, for that fine speech. We now welcome our third speaker of the night, Phoebe. Hear, hear.
So I'm going to come at this from a different perspective to my partner Christian and be quite pessimistic about love. And by that, I mean I completely agree that love is a wonderful thing. However, I think in 2023, love is not the same idea that all of us have been talking about. Today, love is dominated by commercialism. Love is dominated by dating apps, by the value of an engagement ring, by the flowers, the chocolates, the teddy bears of Valentine's Day, by capitalism. Now, this is quite a pessimistic view, and I will agree that it is. However, I think it's very important to mention that love has been taken over by this unrealistic expectation that the media, films, Disney have created, and it's taking away from what actually love should be, which is this powerful connection you have with a partner. And so I do argue that there are limits to love. I believe that this darker side of love, this putting of materialistic value on what love is, can be dangerous and is something that limits what love is in this society. I remember that when I talk to friends and family, they talk about this longing for this relationship, for this romantic encounter. But now they spend hours of their day on dating apps swiping, whilst unfortunately Tinder, Bumble, you name it, are taking away lots of profit, monetizing off of it. You look at Instagram and see this artificial depiction of what love is. And unfortunately in today's society, a lot of us around this table will agree that is actually what most of our love experiences have been. And even with Valentine's Day coming up, I get emails from every single company under the sun, you name it, they'll be advertising something to do with love. And I think it's really sad that that is now what we see as Valentine's Day and what love is. And I think it is taking away from what Lisa, our partner, said about what wonderful things love can bring. But I think that's what it is. There are limits to love in that it's not all that we dream of, because the things that create those dreams for us are people trying to profit off it, unfortunately. I think one of the things we see a lot on online about engagement, about having that perfect photo, showing it off to the world, is taking away from actually what love should be, about that private, really important moment you have with a partner. The thing about looking up a partner's ring, about how much it costs them, and that you should have this amount of hours of wages spent on a ring, and about how much money put into weddings and things like that, is taking away, unfortunately, from what love, I think, should be. And so in my case, I simply argue that love is a wonderful thing, but unfortunately in today's society, I think it's slowly being taken away from us, from this encroaching capitalistic world. There we go.
Thank you, speaker, for your fine remarks. We now welcome our fourth speaker of the day, Umar.
It's always so difficult to speak after my peers, given they're so talented. But especially when you're a debater who's chronically underprepared, meaning tonight all I have is my mind and a timer. But I don't think that means I am underprepared, because I've spent most of my life thinking about love, and I find myself to be two things, hopeless and romantic, sometimes even at the same time. And I think the one thing we can probably all take away is that, especially in the world we live in, a lot of the times the things that we come to embody are imposed upon us, on our minds, and even literally in the spaces that we occupy. And that's where I think maybe love can teach us something. I think love functions mostly as a force for reclamation, as in its truest form, love is an exercise of caring, to give the people around us the ability to see, or to be seen, rather, not as what we want them to be, but as who they really are. To give them the opportunity to bow out of the societal expectations, understanding that outside of everything, outside of those systems of commercialization and capitalism, that we do see them. And I think we've become a little bit stingy in exercising love, because love isn't necessarily between two partners. I think it's between everyone. I think it's between a mother and a father, a mother and a daughter, a father and a son. I think it's between friends. And I realize that the older I get, the harder it is to exercise love. The more you lose, be it loved ones, be it partners who fade to nothing but a fading memory. It's harder and harder to give ourselves the space to love more. And when you realize that oftentimes that leaves us regretting many things. And moving back to the principle of love, if we find the courage to love a little bit more, I think it gives us an incredible ability to touch those around of us, to reach into their soul and give them the space to be who they want to be. I think it was Bell Hooks that said something to the effect that when we're hurt, our instinct is to pull away from love, to move away from the systems of commitment. And I think this is why there's probably a need for more love now more than ever, to give ourselves the space to be comforted and seen, past the systems and values that are imposed upon us, but instead as the things we hope to see in ourselves in the mirror, but also to be seen by the people who love us. I think if we're able to do that, maybe we can find it within our hearts, and I'll take the first step from the bottoms of my heart to wish everyone in this room the fact that I do love you. Thank you.
Thank you, speaker, for that fine speech. We now welcome our fifth speaker for the night, Connor. Here.
Well, first of all, thank you, Umar. We love you too, of course. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, everyone, friends. Bonsoir, even. You'll be relieved to hear that this will be my only attempt at French this evening. I wouldn't insult you with that, and also I just don't have the desire to put myself through that with my terrible linguistic skills. But onto the matter at hand. We, rather fortuitously, take a bit of a lower burden in this discussion. We went debate speak, but we needn't prove that love in of itself is this terrible, dreadful thing that we all must avoid like the plague. That would be absurd. Merely, we just need to prove the age-old adage that too much of a good thing can in fact be harmful, that too much love is not necessarily good. Unfortunately, seldom do we see an outpouring of an excess of love, which has actually had a positive impact in what I'm sure you would agree is a troubled and tumultuous world. Rather, I will explain that the most common manifestation, the most common sort of iterance of this excess of love takes place in a harmful way. My point will be very simple, yet I hope powerful. And to quote Hemingway, the most painful thing is losing yourself in the process of loving someone too much and forgetting that you are special too. Love is by definition sacrifice. When you love someone, or when you love something even, you invest your time into that person. You invest yourself into that relationship. Increasingly, your identity, thoughts, behavior become intertwined. And this, to some extent, is fine and can be positive, as we've indeed heard. Doing this too much, though, over-investing, can harm us greatly. In shaping our thoughts and behaviors around particular individual relationships or a particular individual relationship, it is very easy to lose a sense of self. We neglect our passions, we modulate our thoughts and behavior overly, we care less about our other achievements, and we value ourselves increasingly solely in the context of a singular thing or relationship. And we neglect our other relationships. Ladies and gentlemen, we lack infinite time on this earth. We lack an ability to sacrifice indefinitely. If love is sacrifice and investment of our effort, our time, then ladies and gentlemen, we lack the ability to love infinitely. Too much love, therefore, in one area means that we neglect other areas. We neglect to love ourselves, and more importantly, we neglect to love others. This is not the path to a brighter, better world. This is the path to a dark world, a less loving world. For it is we, therefore, who actually stand in favor of love, and not our friends proposing that we should have infinite love, because we only have so much love, and we should focus, or we should distribute it more reasonably, I think. And just to finish, I'd talk about the story of Dido and Aeneas in Book 4 of the Aeneid. I mean, we all know what happens. Dido, the great queen of Carthage, becomes besotted with Aeneas, the strapping hero, and Carthage begins to suffer accordingly. The people begin to starve, and Dido, unfortunately, sort of becomes infatuated with Aeneas. And then, of course, when Aeneas leaves, Dido simply can't go on. So Virgil's message is clear, my message is clear, and I believe Hemingway's message is clear. We should be cautious of too much love in one particular area.
Thank you, speaker, for your fine remarks. We now welcome our final speaker of the evening, Mansa. Hear, hear.
Esteemed audience, it's an honor and privilege to conclude this very lovely, in more ways than one, debate, and I'm really sorry for showing my back to so many of you. In my speech, I will focus on why the ideal of loving more, of continuously striving throughout our lives to both love more and be loved more in return, is something fundamentally positive. So first, love is rarely overwhelming to begin with. I think it's way more common for people to not love enough or to not be loved enough than the other way around. And this is why we, as both individuals and society, should strive to love more, regardless of the state or quality of our existent or non-existence, romantic and other significant relationships. Now, how to do that? How to love more? I think social narratives are a powerful tool for people to use on their journey of pursuing that ideal. And even in cases when those social narratives are fundamentally flawed, like Phoebe mentioned, for example, displaying love through conspicuous consumption, I think the ultimate outcome is that people are striving towards that ideal, and they devote either money, time, or energy towards the betterment of their romantic relationships, as well as, by extension, their other significant relationships, and the love they have for themselves. Think of a couple that have been together for decades, and I think it's only natural that once the initial infatuation fades, that there is simply more effort needed to keep the spark alive. And this could be, keep on going on dates, do small deeds of love, showcasing our love for each other. Yet many couples give up on their ideal and preferring to live often a less fulfilling, less loveful life. And while the ideal is by its definition unattainable, since where is the upper limit on love, I think striving towards loving more leads to at least its approximation and ultimately net benefit for individuals and society. I think I could compare it to two things. So first, religion, where even though, like the social narratives I mentioned, its interpretation may be sometimes flawed, it gives people a tool to be better human beings, among other things. And here they simply strive to love more by whatever means they have at their disposal, without expecting that their love might be 100% reciprocated, and simply believing it's a good thing to do. And second, I will compare it to Gomez Adams, who loves, even worships Morticia in many ways more than Morticia loves him. But you know what? He's a very happy man. He's in love with his wife, himself, family, hobbies. Fundamentally, he's in love with life itself. So let me conclude this debate with this simple question. Have you ever heard of anyone complaining that they have too much love in their lives? I haven't, and I think those who would answer yes, we can just be happy for them. And yeah, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I have another round of applause for my 6 wonderful speakers? So before I open this discussion up to our lovely audience members, I would like to ask my speakers if they have responses that they would like to present to the other speakers. Yes, Christian.
I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Lisa's wonderful speech and her acknowledgement of Sisyphus, or rather Camus' Sisyphus. And to that, I would like to raise you another famous resident of Tartarus in Greek mythology, who is, of course, Tantalus, who, rather than being constantly attached to his punishment, being the boulder in Sisyphus's case, he is instead constantly just too far from the pair, because he was a glutton in his life, and in the afterlife, he is too far from it. And I think in this sense, that is the more fitting analogy for our debate, because as I mentioned, and as some of my fellow debaters have mentioned, to have so much love that you're drowning in it even, or in Sisyphus's case, crushed under it like the boulder, I think is more similar to being endlessly just out of reach of the true meaning of life, the true multitude of life. Because when you have so much of one thing, it's really hard to get anything else, both as an individual, but also as a society as a whole. So I think if we're going to be talking about people who are punished by the gods, I think we should also recognize our friend Tantalus from down the road. And I think he can teach us a valuable lesson about this as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Christian, for your fine remarks. Would anyone in the table like to have another response to any other speeches, or perhaps what Christian just said about Greek mythology, or, allude to more mythologies and characters?
I feel obliged to respond because I believe that the boulder is not a metaphor for love. It is not the thing that is causing so much pressure on Sisyphus. I think the boulder is essentially life and meaning of it, and love is something that is in his mind that, in my metaphor, is driving him forward, is not letting him to give up and to fall. This is the idea that I was trying to convey with the metaphor. Therefore, I believe that, yes, we can say that there are other Greek mythology characters who were perhaps too far from the boulder and were too far from love, but one cannot drown in it, as I think our side concluded, because we haven't heard anyone complaining about having too much love that actually stops you from pushing the boulder of the meaning of your life forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I open this to the audience, would one last speaker like to give a response? Going once, going twice. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, the floor is now yours. Would anyone like to respond to our 6 lovely speeches that you heard? Yes. Sorry, do I give the microphone to you, or would you like to stand up?
just say that I'd be remiss if I didn't point. I'd be remiss if I don't. It's the same. It's fine. I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that none of you have mentioned either female writers or the women's perspective, and especially referencing Greek mythology, which is all about denigrating the woman in the name of love. You all miss the point of love.
Umar, you seem to have a response to this. Would you like to respond?
Yeah, so I think maybe I was a bit unclear, but I spoke, or I referenced the great bell hooks, someone who I think understands love more than most, in understanding that, like you say, love actually does form a radical way to reconceptualize the societal perception that we have. Trust me, we didn't forget.
Thank you for that remark, though. Ladies and gentlemen, any other responses to our 6 lovely speakers? The gentleman on my left.
I'm sorry if I phrase this in a strange way. I think it's been acknowledged that in the presence of too much love, it's very easy for us to lose our personhood in the things that we love or the people that we love. My question would be, in the absence of that additional love that drives us to lead wholesome lives or leads us to good pursuits, what replaces that driving force in our lives, if not for more trivial things or things, in the worst case, very awful things like hatred?
Very thoughtful question. Who would like to take a response on this? Christian.
Yeah, Oswald, I think you really get at the heart of some of the things I was trying to mention, which is to say that love can be so many things. To the Greeks, it was 7 things, and this is the last time I'm mentioning Greece, don't worry. But I think my concern with too much love is to say that we lose out on things like friendship, on things like greed, on things like ambition, or in the wrong sense, on things like grief, right? All of those things are lost when we are, we supplant them with love only, with love as all, right? We only strive for love on their world. We only grieve the loss of a love. We only are jealous of other people for their love, right? So I think to respond to your question is not to say what supplants love without it. It's to say, well, what do we lose with it, right? So, yeah.
Thank you for that remark. Would there be any other responses in the audience that someone would like to raise? Yes, the gentleman in black in the back.
So basically, I just wanted to ask a question that kind of broadens the perspective of the question asked here beyond of what love is. And my question is pretty simple. Is there generally a need for anything infinite in a finite life? Thanks.
Is there anyone on the table that would like to respond to that question? Mansa.
Yeah, I think as I mentioned in my speech, even when something is infinite, I think the pursuit of it is a net benefit because you keep on striving towards something better, something more, whether this is better romantic relationships or loving more, receiving more love, or being a better friend or a better family member, or even in your career, right? Usually you strive to be better every day, and it's not about a final goal, if that's even attainable, but just of this pursuit of something better all the time. And even though on one hand it might be a bit demotivating knowing that there's never going to be this final goal that's going to be achieved, I think being content with simply the process and like developing and being better is itself pretty rewarding. And this goes for love and as well as other things that you mentioned, I think.
Thank you for that remark. I will take more questions or responses from the audience if there are any. Yes, I will take the person in the front first.
Well, sorry, I digress because I'm thinking about the other commentators. And in regards to Greek, which I think for the first commentator, I believe that women are solely used as an object in order to succeed, because I think the goal of Greek mythology and of Greek characters, of Greek heroes in general, is for succeed. And I think women are just used as a tool to succeed. not as an object of love. In regards to Sisyphus, I think it's one of rare few myths that if you look at all of the story of Sisyphus, the way he starts his deceit, his treachery, his sort of mastermindness and, well, ukana, we say in my language, but it's sort of like a trick of the gods, is in order for the love of his wife. Ergo is, I think, one of rare few myths that does project love. But for all the speakers, especially the ones that believe that there is such thing as too much love, my question is, if we are lucky, we are birthed by passionate love, we are conceived by it. We are birthed by maternal love, and then raised by paternal love, again, if we are lucky. And reared and our values are installed by familiar love, and then we are accepted by love of our friends and society, again, if we are lucky. You all choose, and I think majority of the speakers tonight have chosen to focus solely on romantic love, and it's one of very few loves we get. I think this is a sort of a mask to a face, a confrontation that we have as young people because we are pressured to have a romantic love. We are pressured to have a partner, we are pressured to have somebody that understands us and also sexually fulfill us. Do you think your arguments would change if you would pursue the notion of that there is too much love in regards to friendship, family, and society, especially in regards to your careers and your acceptance by yourself and the others around you?
I think that you raise a point which, when I was writing my speech, was probably my biggest worry, was this sort of concept of the multitude of loves. And I guess my response to that would be to include a female author, Judith Butler, and she's deeply concerned, like many modernists are, with the separability of the self from the society, right? So even in your description, you mention all these types of love, right? This paternal love that raises you, this maternal love, friendship, right? You have, agape and eros and all this stuff. And I guess my concern still is to say that I still think even when we include all of this, we do lose when we have too much love, right? In Butler's case, it is a concern with the way that we perform our gender as it relates to heterosexual desire and heteromantic stereotypes in our society. But I think more broadly, it's a concern with the way that love can be drowning and it can be all-encompassing. And even with all these different forms of love, I do think that the self is lost, and the complexity of life can easily be lost by the multitude of loves, although I do recognize and accept your point that there is so much more to love than just romance.
Thank you, speaker, for that fine speech, and thank you for that very thoughtful question. Sorry.
Commentator. So when you said we lose ourselves in the people we love, but don't we also find ourselves in the people we love, in the things we love? We choose them. It's our conscious thought that we love them. And are there attributes in them, in the things, in cultures we subscribe to, in the people, in the family, in the people we admire and, sort of fan over, adore? Don't we find ourselves as well in them? Because we adore them. We find parts of ourselves, maybe the broken parts, maybe the shining parts, but isn't that love it also?
Yeah, so the point of my question was to sort of figure out, if we didn't have this excess of love, what would be replacing that, right? So I do acknowledge that a lot of the good things that we do have in society, a lot of the fulfilling experiences that we have in society exist because we can love things or we can love people, and that completes us as people. So my question was more, so what happens to us if we suddenly don't have that, right? So what other emotions would drive us to do similar things, if that is possible at all, right? Thank you for your response.
I forgot the before, I'm sorry.
If I remember correctly, there was a lady in the second row.
Thank you for the amazing debate. I've been a part of UCL Debating Society, so I won't really do that of the time. But something that I did think is worth bringing up is the idea of love and how it has changed through the ages. And it's not a linear evolution where it used to be pure and it's impure or muddled by capitalistic greed. Now I'm sure in some fresco somewhere you can find a man getting something for the girl he loves or other non-heteronormative expressions of love. But I think it's really interesting because, and I'd love to hear your views on this as well, in your research when you were writing your speech, how did you confront with the definition of love as it has been to society? Because even if you think about it historically, people weren't marrying for love, right? They were marrying for survival, they were marrying for advantages. The stories that capture our attention definitely have to do a lot more with love, and even then, it's muddy. Like, I have never known a person who's been patient and kind in love, as the First Corinthian goes. If anything, people in love are some of the most impatient people. So it's just interesting to, it'd just be interesting to hear how you grappled with those ideas of how are you defining love for the age today, if you separate it from the capitalistic and the social bounds that we live in.
Yeah, so I moved to England recently to start my master's, and one of the first things I came across was Foucault's writings on power and space, and it functioned, and also bell hooks, which is why I was talking about them earlier, but it functions for me, love, outside of the romantic element, as a mechanism of deconstructing the systems imposed upon me. So for instance, loving my friends in a way that is true has allowed me to deconstruct masculinity as it might have been imposed upon me. And I think that is the way, or rather the most useful way we might be able to interrogate it. I think there is a constant evolution to the way in which societally, and especially as someone who has changed their entire global context, the way in which you have now the space to engage in those things. And so as much as in the past, love might have been, defined or within a specific criteria, I think love, especially outside of the romantic arena, in every relationship, even in the sort of gambit of public space, something as simple as offering a smile to a stranger or offering a helping hand to someone in need offers a radical point of reassessment. So we can define it outside of the capitalist systems in a meaningful way that actually empowers not only ourselves, but our ability to be loved by others.
Thank you for those fine remarks. We've heard a lot from my left side. Would there be any audience members on my right side who would like to offer some thoughts, perhaps some opinions on love or anything that you've heard from us as well tonight? Perhaps, yes.
Yes, please.
It's interesting to sort of analyse love between a mother and a daughter, especially when the love is overflowing and maybe extensive, because it can create that sort of codependence and exceed into very toxic and really affect your different realms, your relationship going forward with your spouse or even your friends, maybe seeking for something that they should be providing, and that's not in the criteria of being a friend. So just to make a comment on love between, I guess, a mother and a daughter, it's interesting to hear.
Thank you for that fine remark. Would there be any responses? Yes.
So I'm going to abandon my capitalistic view. But I would answer to that I do think that when we think of love, we think of it as a very pure, good thing. And love can manifest itself in negative ways as well. Even when people do love others, they don't have to be nice to them, they don't have to treat them well, and they can be horrible people. So I think that is something that we haven't really mentioned around this table, is that there are limits to love, and that love can show its ways in toxic environments, even without intention. I know that when we were preparing this debate, we were very aware of that, all of us around the table. And I think especially with parental love with a child, that's a really interesting relationship that I think everyone has a very unique perspective on, and something that there isn't this sort of united vision of what that looks like, because everyone has experienced it very differently. And it's a type of love that everyone has gone through in some sort of way, if it's there or if it wasn't. So I think that's a really important point to highlight. There is a limit of too much love. and to address a really important point that love isn't always pure, unfortunately.
And just to add to that, I'll be very brief, but I think it's really interesting how you link the idea that the excess of love, which manifests itself in a negative way, can then spill over and subsequently impact other relationships as well. And I think that really speaks to the idea which we've been trying to present insofar as specifically dealing with the idea of too much, that too much can actually be corruptive and can impact negatively on sort of your other relationships, which also involve love. So I think that's a really relevant point to what we're trying to bring to you this evening as well.
Thank you. Any other audience members? Yes, Miss in the front.
Thank you. It was a wonderful debate. As someone noted, it was a lot about romantic love and also heterosexual love. Because of the traditions we're invoking, but still I have a question about that. And also in this heterosexual love, what do you do about the kind of inequality, natural inequality due to patriarchy that is inherent to heterosexual relations? And how do you conquer in any love relationship the kind of equality you are all, representative of?
Are there any speakers that would like to take? Maybe.
I think the capitalistic one obviously fits into that narrative, and I think you can see that a lot with advertisements and things. We still see like the 12 red roses that the man will buy for the woman. A lot of the advertisements I get in emails from companies are very much about giving flowers, chocolates, things like that, holidays. And there is always, sadly still, on a lot of advertisements, it is just a man and a woman, and normally they're both white. And it's this classic depiction of it. I think that all of us around the table, although we haven't said it explicitly, see love not just in this way. And I think for me, where I was coming from with my argument specifically is also that the love that we idealize, even if we don't actually see it in ourselves in terms of we don't relate to it, is this heteronormative idea. And I do believe in this pessimistic, capitalistic world that we live in, that is being projected onto us still through media and things like that. It is slowly changing for the better. But I think through what I was trying to argue in my case was that we're having a negative perception of love because the old-fashioned way of how we see love is being perpetuated through corporate companies and things like that. I don't know if anyone else around the table has something positive to mention, but I do think, especially with economics, that it is a key driver to why we still see relationships in that way and why traditions are still ingrained in us in that way. Even though people do like having these traditions, I certainly wouldn't mind having some flowers and some chocolates. I know that I probably have got that idea from what I've seen around me and what I've grown up from a child, seeing Disney films with a prince coming and then making your life wonderful, and that's the end of your story. So yeah, I don't know if anyone else has got any views on it.
I'll be brief because I do think I'm really glad that you raised this point, because I think that we as queer people have such a different relationship with romantic love, because I think there's two main reasons. And I think the first is because, the simple act of attraction, like that spark that you feel, that I do believe is universal, immediately creates a differential social class for you, right? Whether that is in your relationship with your same gendered peers, your opposite gendered peers, and society as a whole. But beyond that, I think this is, I think maybe somewhere that we maybe concede the point, which is to say that especially I would argue for queer people, for LGBT people, that love in and of itself can be so powerful. Romantic love can be so much more than just a simple attraction to another person. It can be something that actually fulfills you on a personal level, because it says, I accept who I am, I represent who I am, and I am, empowered, even if it's just a stupid thing like catching somebody's eye at a bar, is something that can feel, for queer people, I don't want to speak for straight people, but for queer people at least, it's something that can feel so, deeply revelatory, I guess. And I think in that sense, it is really important to understand that different people, be they different gender, different races, or different sexual orientations, experience love in very different ways.
Yeah, just to, I think, conclude on a positive note, I think, as Phoebe mentioned, there are a lot of issues that still persist in both our society and in other parts of the world. However, I still think that at this time we're privileged in many ways, as in how love is defined. So it could be as simple as being a norm for people to marry for love and not for financial resources or family connections, that we do have this greater diversity in the media of what love is supposed to be or how it looks like. As I said, there's a long way to go, but I think there's a clear change for the better in the past couple of decades, or how it was even 10 years ago. So I think if it's going to continue that way, it's something positive ultimately.
Due to time constraints, I think we only have 5 minutes left. I will entertain one more point from the audience, if there are any. Yes.
Okay, I'm sitting here feeling a little bit confused, because now love feels like a very intangible thing in a very abstract way. So I wonder if could it be defined through other feelings? Could love be defined through other feelings? And this is a question for the panel. Could it be defined through trust, with trust, honesty, safety, freedom?
So I'm going to go against my side here, because I think the times I felt most love have not been through being given a gift or something like that. It has just been through someone saying, oh, I thought of you last week when I was at X, or, being invited round to someone's house and feeling like they feel like you can be in that place with them and feeling safe. I think that's actually when I felt the most love, is when you just feel that complete sense of freedom and comfort, and just, you can just laugh your head off for hours with them, or, just meet up for 5 minutes and just feel completely reconnected when you haven't seen them in a year. I think for me, that's actually when I feel the most love. I don't know about other people, but for me, gifts and things like that are thoughtful and have meaning. I'm going completely against my own capitalistic idea here, but I don't personally think that actually is what love is. I think it's a way that media have tried to depict what love is, but I think everyone deep down probably doesn't have a gift being given to them as their most memorable moment of love in their life.
No, just to add to that, I think what's quite interesting here is, in many ways, it's very difficult to arbitrage a definition of love. I think in many ways it's relative. I think there are multiple sort of things for different people which can constitute something which makes them feel love, or makes them or feel loved, or indeed makes them feel loved. So I think it's a really hard one to sort of pin down. It could be feeling, I don't know, like someone trusts you, or like you trust someone else, or even if someone just makes you feel happy once in a while, makes you laugh. So I think it's almost entirely relative to the individual as well, which is what I guess makes love very unique as a concept.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we've reached the end of our slot and the end of our discussion. On behalf of the University College London Debating Society, we thank you so much for the opportunity, for allowing us to be here to share our thoughts, and thank you for letting us spend 40 minutes, 50 minutes with hearing a group of young people tell you about love and their thoughts about love. I know it's a bit ironic, but I hope it's sparked some sort of critical thought about how we view and consume love. And I hope you say I love you to someone that you love tonight. And with that, happy early Valentine's Day, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you.